Hello everyone, how are you? I hope you are staying well. This is Zenith with Gardening Mindfully. Today we'll be potting up a couple of urns that will be placed on a north-facing patio. I decided to go with Heucheras or coral bells, and these are native to North America. There are a lot of different varieties. This is a Monrovia plant, and it is the Carnival Black Olive Coral Bells or Heuchera. What I like about this plant is the color of the foliage. It is not the normal traditional green foliage, and I think it will go really well with my trailing plant, which is a sweet Alyssum. I love Alyssum because of the small dainty flowers that tends to be fragrant. I'm not looking for a lot of color in these urns because I already have a lot of color on the patio. What I did with the urn, because it's so tall and the root system is not very large in the Heucheras, what I did was I filled the urns halfway with pine cones. I'm using pine cones because it's free. So both urns has pine cones, and then I will fill the rest of it up with potting soil. So I have removed my first Heuchera or coral bells from the pot, and I want to go ahead and take a look at the roots. The roots looks really good. It's not root bound by any means. It's a healthy plant. But I'll take this opportunity to remove all the dead or dried leaves. Again, the dried leaves can harbor pests. So I'll go ahead and I'll remove them. And basically just to clean up the plant. Now, Heucheras tend to do really well in part shade, so a north-facing patio is ideal. There's not a lot of dried leaves. And we look in the interior just to make sure. Again, we want to remove all the dried leaves. And I love the foliage on coral bells. They tend to stay rounded like a mounding habit. They're not fussy plants. And they bloom from spring all the way through summer. And they are herbaceous perennials, so they're not an annual. I'm just loosening up the root ball just a bit. It doesn't have a really deep root system, so there was no point in filling up the urn with all that soil. So it was a great idea filling it halfway with the pine cones. Now I get a better chance to look on the interior of the plant. Remove any dried leaves that I missed. They're really great bloomers, and they don't really require a lot of care at all, which is the reason I just love Heucheras. I went ahead and I added some plant tone to the bottom of the hole. I'll add some more soil. want to make sure I leave some room for the alyssums. Now this is going to be really pretty. Now here is the alyssum. You'll notice the roots, it's beautiful. It's not root bound at all. There's really not much I need to do with this. But what I like about the alyssum, not only is it fragrant and that it stays in constant bloom, it's also a magnet for hummingbirds. So is the coral bells. They both require the same amount of water. So the Heuchera or coral bells and the alyssum both like to stay on the moist side. Not soggy wet, but they do like to be moist. So it's ideal, and that's one of the things that we need to think about when we're doing containers, is to ensure that the plants that we use require the same conditions. Does one plant prefer to be dry, whereas the other one likes to be moist? That's something that we need to consider. In this case, both of these plants has the same water requirement. So this is perfect. Again, this alyssum looks really good. There's no need to do anything with the root ball. So I'll just go ahead and I'll pack it in. The alyssums, I will give them some space because they tend to spread a lot, so they will really fill in nicely. So I'm not packing them in too tightly. I want to go ahead and give them space to grow. Use a tag from Monrovia. It's a perennial. And it also has the instructions as far as care on the back. It's deer resistant, which is awesome. It's easy to care. It requires 1 to 3 hours of morning sun. So again, a north-facing patio is ideal. Watering, it likes to be semi-moist. And at maturity, it should be about 12 inches tall and 14 inches wide. Bloom time is spring and summer, and hardiness -20 to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. So for my zone 8A garden, this is perfect. I can actually keep it in the container all year round. Next, the Alyssum. This is a Proven Winners variety, and it is called the White Knight Sweet Alyssum. And it's sweet alyssum because it is so fragrant. Looking at the back of the tag, Proven Winners has provided the care instructions. Habit is trailing. Again, this will be my spiller plant. You've heard of filler, thriller, and spiller. This is my spiller plant. Blooms plant into hard frost. It's an annual, so at the first sign of frost, we will lose the alyssum. Height is 8 to 12 inches tall. Spacing 12 inches, maximum of 18 inches. And as far as light, full to part sun. So part shade is ideal. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the second Heuchera. Let's hope the roots are just as healthy as the first one. So it did slide out fairly easy. Oh, this one is a bit more root bound, but it's really not that bad. I'll just go ahead and remove these roots here. Just a bit more root bound than the first plant. So we'll go ahead and remove that, and we'll go ahead and break up these roots a bit. Then we need to go ahead and remove the dried leaves to prevent pests from hiding in our plant. So we're explaining all of these and showing you all of these steps because we want you to be successful. I read a story today about how many plants were discarded because the first time gardeners did not know what to do or how to care and maintain their plants. So I'm hoping by taking the time to explain each step that if you're a first-time gardener, you will learn how to take care of your plants and to avoid us spending so much money on these plants and then have to discard them. So I'll go ahead and I'll place this coral bells in the center of my urn, and then I will flank it with the alyssum. As I mentioned before, a half of the pot is filled with pine cones, and then I topped it with potting soil, and then I added some fertilizer on top of the soil. So I'll go ahead now and I'll place this Heuchera on top of the soil, then I'll fill it in with some more soil, then I'll flank it with the alyssum. So you also want to step back and make sure that your plant is not down in the soil too deep. If that's the case, we just need to add a little bit more soil. So in my case, I need to add some more soil. I'm adding soil to ensure that the plant is not too deep. So I don't want to bury the plant any deeper than it was in the nursery container. Now I'll go ahead and I'll add my sweet alyssums. And again, look how beautiful those roots are. See, it's a trailing plant, so it will trail over the side of the urn. I have 10 alyssums, which means each urn will have 1 coral bells and 5 alyssums. And again, I'm spacing them maybe 4 inches apart. There will definitely be a backside to this container because I'm putting it up against the wall. If you find the information in this video helpful, kindly share and subscribe to our channel. Okay guys, here are the final containers. We have as our center plant the Carnival Black Olive Coral Bells by Monrovia. The coral bells will act as our thriller and our filler plant. A thriller is normally a center plant that's generally spiky. So our coral bells is serving a dual purpose. The foliage will act as our filler and the flower spikes will act as our thriller. And our spiller plant is the Proven Winners White Knight Sweet Alyssum. Now you may be thinking, why did I go with that dark colored coral bells when the pot is almost the same color? But if you'll notice that the alyssum being white really brightens the pot. It brings out the color in the Heuchera. In addition to that, I was not looking for any diva planters. And I really did not want something that's going to take away from the other plants that are on the patio. I think these came out beautifully and will be a win on the patio. Thanks for watching. Happy gardening and see you in the next video.